Well, it's about effing time. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, that was the headline that I first saw at Politico.com discussing the veritable wave of women who are moving into senior positions for candidates in the Democratic presidential nomination process. And it goes through and documents how many women are in senior positions in various campaigns and how this is so much better than it was in the past, and how women are not just serving as foot soldiers, but often have actual positions of influence and power. And first of all, I guess, Bill, normally this show can be a little provocative and can try to trigger a response from you, but I certainly expect that you would celebrate this along with the rest of America, would you not?
I don't celebrate a quota system of anybody as any form of progress. I really don't. To the degree that women have the ability to become members of Congress in a way that they didn't, let's just say in the recent past, maybe 50 years ago, that's great. And free access, when I say free access, let me rephrase that, open access, unfettered access to political office is nothing but good for the republic. But this idea that finally women, are starting to come into their own is, like all other progressive, forward-looking ideas, at least 3 generations out of date. I mean, I've been working for women my entire life, pretty much, in entertainment. I look at the office building here, and 2/3 of the workers here are women. This idea that women are suddenly being integrated into the body politic because there's a lot of them showing up and winning Democratic primaries is not a reflection of the fact that women have suddenly emerged into the workforce. You could make that point with a fair amount of enthusiasm in 1966.
Well, there's no dispute that they're in the workplace, Bill. The two issues of contention brought forward in this Politico article
I understand that.
Are, number one, women in real positions of responsibility, and number two, equal pay for that work. According to one Democratic consultant who ran Hillary Clinton's Priorities USA PAC, her name is Anna Caprara. She said for years, women have been doing the same work as men for $10,000 to $20,000 less than men for doing the same work. She's the one who said it's about effing time that this happened. And I want to get your reaction to this, what I think is an intensely conservative quote from Ann Caprara. I really relish the day when this is not a story, when we're not having these conversations of are we paying men and women equal. Bill, this woman works for Democrats. Why are Democrats struggling? Why are Democrats struggling to pay men and women equally?
This woman works for Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton, despite the fact that it was the entire theme of her campaign and was going to be the coach that she rode to victory until Donald Trump put 5 of Bill Clinton's rape victims in the front row of debate number 2, this woman worked for the champion of women's rights, Hillary Clinton, who paid her staff significantly less if they were women than they did if they were men. Now, as far as this, I just keep going into this and debunking this for as long as I want to, because it's just so bloody simple. If this woman is actually telling me that an employer, a guy who's trying to find an assistant manager at Target, can have a candidate come in and say, what does this pay? And have him say, well, it's $42,000 if you're a man, but it's only $33,000 if you're a woman, sugar lips. If you actually are trying to tell me that kind of thing is possible in America today, you are out of your mind.
No, it's not in America, Bill. It's not at Target. It's in Democratic campaigns.
Well, that's their business. I'm not responsible for the racism of the Democratic Party, and I'm not responsible for the misogyny of the Democratic Party, and I'm not responsible for the anti-Hispanic qualities of the Democratic Party, because all of this will happen. All of it will happen when you decide in your bones that you are going to judge people by their exteriors rather than their interiors. When you make that decision, you will never get out of this trap. And when she starts saying, I look forward to the day when this thing isn't a story, I look forward to the day when it's not a story too, because it's not a story for conservatives. We don't have this struggle at all. It doesn't bother us in the slightest. We are concerned about what people are like on the inside. If this person is the right person for the job, you hire them. And this argument, by the way, that rapacious conservatives are paying women less than men is absurd on its face, because if it were true, who would hire a man? Why? Why would you pay this, 20% excise tax on hiring a man when you've got a perfectly capable woman of doing the job? It's a lie. It's a repeated lie. It goes on and on and on. It's well known that the discrepancy between total pay of men divided by men, total pay of women divided by the number of women, does yield a discrepancy, but the discrepancy is more than compensated for by the fact that men put in longer hours at more dangerous jobs. They take less time off, and all of it. It's this idea that men and women have a different pay scale is not only stupid. I know this is going to come as a shock to somebody who works in the Democratic Party. It's also illegal.
Well, apparently not illegal for campaigns. However, since you took an uncharacteristic slap at Hillary Clinton, I'm surprised at you. Patty Solis Doyle, who served on Hillary Clinton's campaign back in 2008, said, and I quote, "She, meaning Mrs. Clinton, really empowered me to hire women and pay them as much as I would pay a man doing the same work.
Liar.
All the senior people made the same amount of money, and we put women, not just women, but women of color, around the senior table. It was important to Hillary, and it's important for me to do that."
She's either lying or she's misinformed, and I suspect she's lying. It's a well-known fact that Hillary Clinton paid women less than men on her campaign. It's just completely evidenced fact. So either she's ignorant of it or she's lying.
So, Bill, there are a lot of candidates on the Democratic side, and I want to end this relatively brief episode with this thought. There are many candidates on the Democratic side, but there's only one real candidate at this point with any substantial polling numbers on the Republican side. And as it turns out, you would think with some of those Democrats polling upwards of 2-3% in the popularity polls, that mention of this Republican candidate would rank a little higher in the story than it did, but I had to scroll down, I'm going to say roughly 90% of the way to the end of this relatively long story to find these two brief sentences. On Donald Trump's campaign senior team, 5 of 11 salaried campaign staffers are women, but of the total of 19 senior staffers on Trump's campaign, 8 are women. So it took them all the way to the end of the story to point out that there's rough parity on the Trump senior level campaign team. Why do you think that doesn't justify a higher ranking that, after all, he's the incumbent president of the United States?
Oh, you dear sweet boy.
It's political. They're a news source, right? They are objective journalists.
Objective journalists, subject to multiple layers of fact-checking and editorial supervision. Yeah, that's kind of a problem, isn't it? Every time they accuse Trump of being anti-woman, and then the women who he's hired say, not only did he treat us fairly and with respect, but he also treated us like equals to the degree that if we weren't performing, he fired us. He treated them like people. Can you imagine? He treated them like individual people. And this is what terrifies the left so much, is the idea of people being treated as individuals. Because if people start thinking about themselves as individuals rather than as members of persecuted victim groups, then they're going to start doing different calculations on how they vote. The Democratic Party is predicated on the idea of terrifying gays that this is the most homophobic place in the world. When, in point of fact, I'd be willing to bet you that an openly gay man in West Hollywood versus in Riyadh, let's say, might have a different experience and change his mind about that issue. Same thing for women, same thing for blacks, same thing for Hispanics, same thing for everybody. This idea has to be maintained that this country is an awful, awful cesspit of discrimination and hatred and manipulation and control in order to turn out extremely intense voters of relatively limited numbers. And the actual math on this is really quite shocking. But I had it broken down to me once by a pollster and a statistician. And he basically said if the Democratic Party doesn't get 85, 86, 87% of the black vote, they never win another national election again. Ever. Now, that certainly points out the absolute poverty of the Republican attempt to woo that audience, but nevertheless, this is how it works. And this is my fundamental, ultimate disagreement with these disgraceful politics, is that their entire political strategy is based on division along racial lines, along sexual lines, orientation lines, all of it. It's based on division. Our entire philosophy is based on the idea that there is no division, that every single person that comes to work for a company is a minority. Every single applicant that comes through that door is a minority of one, and that is the person that we're going to be dealing with. And this idea of e pluribus unum, out of many one, and equality for all under the law, this idea is the end of the Democratic Party, or at least of what it's become. So I'm not impressed by the fact that the Democrats are suddenly, finally starting to treat their women with the respect that Republicans have been treating them with for the last 50, 60, 70 years. If they want to pat themselves on the back about that, they're certainly welcome to it. But as usual, they're arriving on the scene of a crime that was committed 70 years ago, and they're looking for clues after the crime has been solved and the case has been filed and the perps have been put in prison.
From the beginning, membership at BillWhittle.com has been granted without regard to sex. In fact, there's no religious test. There's no kind of litmus test of any sort other than, are you willing to be part of the team that produces these conversations, some 45 to 50 new videos each month, who produces a member-written blog that is vibrant and dynamic. That's all we care about. You want to be part of this team? Go to BillWhittle.com, click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this possible.